Hey everyone, welcome back to the I Heart Podcast, and welcome to the third episode of the show. My name is Jonathan North, and this is the final rerun before we get into some brand new content. I guess technically the Q&A segment last time was brand new content, but next time will be the first completely brand new episode produced specifically for this podcast. But I'm getting ahead of myself. First things first, I want to introduce you to one final show that will be a staple of the podcast in the future, the Disney Movie Marathon. This is one of the big things I want to use this podcast for moving forward. This show began on YouTube, but has had a couple of snags, and I've ended up only releasing 2 episodes so far. My original idea for the show was to get together with my cousin Sarah or one of my YouTube friends and talk about every animated Disney movie from the beginning with Snow White to the present with whatever happens to be the most recent film when I get there. I plan to use footage from the movies and make a proper professional looking show out of it. And then Sarah and I recorded the first episode and we had no sound, so we re-recorded it and the lighting was horrible and the sound is still less than ideal. And then once it was online, the entire thing was instantly copyright claimed by several skeezy third-party companies, not one of which was Disney, thanks to YouTube's inherently flawed content ID system. I tried again with Pinocchio, and while things did go a lot smoother, aside from being copyright claimed again of course, we ended up with a lot more footage, a lot more than is ideal for a fully produced YouTube show, and I had to trim quite a bit to get a manageable length for the video, and it still took me forever to edit, which may have been my first clue that something needed to change. Actually, the copyright issues probably should have been the first clue, but whatever, I digress. Anyway, for the most part, I would like to do as many of these Disney episodes with my cousin as possible. She's not necessarily as big an animation fan as I am, or even as big a movie fan. I already see so many fewer films than the average online reviewer, and Sarah barely watches even a fraction of what I do. So I like getting her perspective as somebody who's pretty much completely outside the whole online movie reviewing world. Plus she can be pretty funny sometimes, and I think that just makes our reviews together even better. However, we currently live around 2 hours apart, so our reviews together happen less often than I would like. Because of this, there was a pretty big gap between the time we recorded our Pinocchio review and when we finally got to Fantasia, and in that gap, I started putting together ideas that would eventually become this podcast. So, given the copyright issues and the sheer length of time that editing these reviews into a fully produced show can take, not to mention the fact that I never have any idea when I'll be able to record with Sarah next, I thought it might be prudent to maybe rethink how I'm releasing the episodes of the Disney Movie Marathon. To that end, I decided to make them into a semi-regular feature on the podcast instead of a fully produced YouTube show. I'll still release them onto YouTube, but I don't think I'm going to bother with footage and the attempted professional editing job that I was originally going for. I just want to have fun with the series, and that's what we're going to do with this podcast. So today we're going to be looking back at the very first review we did for the series, Snow White and the 7 Dwarfs, with my cousin Sarah. And if you're paying attention, very briefly, another cousin, her sister, Sasha. Like I said earlier, there were some issues with the audio that night we recorded, so you'll have to bear with us, but other than that, given all the issues we faced when we recorded, I think I was able to make the best of the situation, and I'm pretty happy with the way it turned out. One thing to note, if you're watching this on YouTube, I have decided to keep in the visual component where possible. I recut most of this from my raw footage, so there won't be much of the original footage from the actual movie in this video, but there is some later on due to me having to take some footage directly from my original video because I couldn't find that raw footage. Either way, even though for the past couple of episodes I just put the podcast artwork in the video, I decided that starting with this one, when I had footage, I'll try to do a visual podcast. I've been getting more total views here than I am downloads on the podcast anyway, so I figured I'd make it more visually appealing for those who want it. I'm sure I'll have more that are just audio in the future, but I figured I've got the footage here, why not use it? Okay, let's get on with our review of Snow White and the 7 Dwarfs. Hey everyone, welcome to the very first episode of the Disney Movie Marathon. This is a series that I've been wanting to do for a long time. I think I had the idea back at the very beginning of my channel, but it's something that I kind of wanted to wait on until I actually felt like I was ready to do it, because this isn't something I wanted to rush into. I wanted to do this right. So for this series, I don't want to do this by myself. I want to have a discussion about the movie, not just this is the movie, this is what I like about it. So I'm going to have a guest in every episode. For now, my guest is going to be my cousin Sarah, because she's really interested in a lot of these first ones. So we're going to be talking about at least the first
zillion.
There's probably going to be some other guests, but for now, Sarah is really interested in a lot of the early ones.
Sarah will have to.
Oh, actually, Sarah's my first choice for a guest. But
Thank you.
I was telling my friend Rachel the other day what I wanted to do, and she said basically that it's almost a rite of passage for a lot of online reviewers to start at the beginning of the Disney series and work their way to the end. She actually did it a few years ago on her blog. But I want to make it this a series that's beyond just a review, because that's what a lot of people do, is just a review. I want this to be like a discussion about the history of the film, the art of the film.
In-depth commentary.
Yes, I want this to be a cut above a random review that you would find online. I want this to be an actual series that is going to be something to look forward to. To that end, this is not going to be a series that happens every week, but it's going to be fun. I'm gonna have fun talking about this with Sarah. We're going to probably do one every time we get together, however often that is.
With a movie like Snow White, it's so iconic. So many people have seen it that if you only touch the surface of it, that would be really boring. So, we're going to tell you a little bit more about the history of it. When it came out, nobody had ever done anything like it. Walt was even in the paper as, like, this was his folly. People were already shooting him down about it. And he kept after it, even though he was running out of money. It was costing hundreds of thousands of dollars. In spite of that, he was a source of employment for artists during the Great Depression, and he was so committed to his vision for the movie that he even provided art training for them to help them achieve what he wanted. And he was really a team player. I gotta give him kudos for that, because I don't know how much of a team player I am. I don't know. He brought in 2 European artists. One of them was described basically as being a maverick, but he had a special point of view where he would come up with all of these creative sketches, and Walt valued him because he was an idea guy, even though he wasn't good as a cartoonist per se. He had really creative ideas. And there was another European artist. I don't know if you'd say European. I think he was from Sweden.
That's still Europe.
Still Europe? Okay. Who was already very polished as a children's book illustrator, using watercolor, absolutely gorgeous, so skilled. And he harnessed both of their talents towards his project. It was very clever on his part to get all of these people to work together and to work so hard, and he would give out a bonus to somebody if they came up with something funny that could go into the movie. $5 if it was good, $10 if it was really good, which would have been a lot more money back then if you adjust for inflation. Helped get you groceries. He also paid a lot of attention to the music, because back then he realized that that's what people would carry with them a lot more. Well, maybe not a lot more than today, but perhaps a lot more than today. They talked about how you can't go out and buy the film.
Mm-hmm.
They could go out and get sheet music, or, sing it to themselves afterwards.
Or a record.
So he put a lot of thought, a lot of dedication, a lot of perfectionism into the film.
That perfectionism is what made the film what it is. It's what made his company what it is. Because without that perfectionism, I don't think the film would have worked.
Probably not. And probably he would have just needed to have given up on it if he just listened to all the naysayers.
Mm-hmm. The fact that he stuck with it through all the people telling him that it was a foolish idea.
Potential company failure.
Yeah, and it really could have been. If it had failed as these trade papers had said it would, his company would have gone under, because he had put so much money into this that they basically were betting everything on this film. And the fact that he kept going, the fact that he persevered through all the people telling him he shouldn't, the fact that he risked everything and it turned out amazing, I think is really inspiring.
At that point, cartoons were for laughs.
Mm-hmm.
And he wanted to take it deeper than that and really tell a story. Cartoons were not for making people cry, and he wanted to see if he could get people to cry. something that I never thought about growing up watching it was that at the time, people didn't necessarily know how the story was going to end. So when you get to that absolutely beautiful scene where she's dead, or just during that whole time when she's dead, they didn't know what was going to happen. And he did get them to cry, and that was really special. Also, I think he wanted to compete with bigger movies and be judged on that level, but I don't think people necessarily knew what to do with him at that time, so he just got a separate award, and that might have been a disappointment to him. It's a good thing that he got some kind of award, but it's a little more understandable when you think about the fact that that had never been done before.
Have you seen the award?
What was it?
Oscar with a bunch of little Oscars trailing after it. In honor of the Dwarfs.
Oh, so that's what I did see it there, but I didn't realize what they were. That's cute.
I don't remember what the exact title of the award was, but it was sort of an honorary thing, just to mark the achievement, even if it wasn't a Best Picture. But the fact that it was an Oscar statuette with 7 little Oscars, I think is cute.
It's very memorable. I bet that's worth a lot of money.
And I like the fact that it was given to him by Shirley Temple. I still find it weird that Shirley Temple and Walt Disney never actually made a film together.
She was at the premiere, though.
Yeah, it just seems like something that it should have happened. I can't believe those worlds never collided.
Like maybe she should have voiced something.
Yeah, it seems like it would have been such a good fit.
Hello. The girl who played Snow White, it was a bit of a, not really a fluke, but Walt, I think at the time, was looking for someone to play her, and I believe was on the phone with her father, and she just sort of butted in like, I can sing! And ended up getting the part. And she just cherished that for the rest of her life. I don't know if she's still living or not. Probably not. But even as an elderly person, she was still singing the part of Snow White. And one of the things about the music, especially, okay, there's a particular song in there, it's probably titled With a Smile and a Song. It sounds so Great Depression. Just the optimism in it, like, it's okay, just pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Yes, I nearly got murdered by the huntsman, but it's okay. I'm gonna make friends with all of these chipmunks now. Anyway, that's something I think to take note of while you're watching it. The things that are quintessentially 30s as well, like the Prince's voice is so 1930s crooner. And even the fact that she has a little squeaky voice, I think fits in with the cute female voice of the era.
The quality of her voice is something that is really, I think it's indicative of the era, because you don't really have people with that kind of voice these days, at least in big roles. Just the fact that she sounds so high, sweet, innocent.
Everything fluctuates. And note her little curly looking do. It fits right in. Could mention also the lady who played the Evil Queen did both the Evil Queen as the Beautiful Queen and as the Hag. She had versatility in her voice. She did a really good job, and she herself was maybe in her 60s when she did that role. So she had skill as a voice actress.
I just found it interesting. I know this probably isn't that interesting, but I thought it was interesting that she was born in the latter half of the 1800s. And I mean, I get this is early 1900s, so that's not that surprising.
It's always interesting to think about, though. It was also interesting to note that the one artist who was 48 was considered an old man compared to all of the people working there in their 20s, including Walt Disney, which shows you just how young he was to be tackling this project.
Mm-hmm.
So, young people, take heart. Go conquer the world. You don't need to build a franchise, though. Just whatever you want to do. It's okay.
I mean, you can build a franchise if you want to.
Especially if it's tasty. I'll support you. Anyway. Well, it would depend if it's like Panera tasty. Anyway, that's a ramble.
One of the things that I liked about coming back to this as an adult was paying more attention to the details, the art, the backgrounds, the animation. That's one of the reasons why I wanted to do this series, is because I wanted to take the time to actually look at these things instead of viewing it like I would have as a kid as a fun movie to watch. I wanted to look at it for the artistic value and talk about those qualities, watch some of the behind the scenes things, and figure out what went into the making of it. Looking at it in that way really helps you appreciate the movie more. I think it elevates it beyond just a movie that you watch. It really helps you appreciate the artistry and everything that went into it, like the story of how it's never been done before, and Walt went through with it even though people were saying he shouldn't. That, to me, I think it gives the story more depth and helps you appreciate it beyond just a movie you saw as a kid.
So yes, gorgeous European-inspired wood carving and landscapes, and a little 1930s-esque princess frolicking with the woodland creatures. It's worth revisiting.
Well, I think that's going to be all for this episode. Next time we get together, we're going to be talking about Pinocchio, which is another movie I have not seen since I was a kid. I'm going to be very interested in revisiting it, especially because I'm remembering some of the things that happened in that movie, and I feel like it's going to be strange watching them now, thinking about how this definitely would not be happening if they were making this movie this day and age.
I do not know how long it's been since I watched the whole movie. So yeah, it's probably going to be very fresh and potentially disturbing.
That's a good tagline. Fresh and potentially disturbing.
It sells.
Anyways, we'll see you next time.
Bye.
As you can tell, this review wasn't that long, which is fine, but it's definitely not as long as I'm hoping most of our future episodes will be. Even though I'm not going to have any set time length, these podcast episodes are just going to be as long as they end up being. Anyway, I kinda wanted to record a Q&A with Sarah like I did with Soul in the last episode, but since I couldn't go record anything else with Sarah for now, to fill out the time I got a few of my animation friends to contribute their thoughts to the episode as well.
I'm at eJunkie2014 on Twitter, and I am privileged to be able to be on Jonathan's show to tell you about Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. It's just a really important film. It was the first animated feature film made in America, and it had a miraculous production cycle. Everything Disney learned about the use of music in the Silly Symphony's slapstick comedy, in the Mickey Mouse cartoons, not to mention the drama and the storytelling techniques and the staging and the camera techniques in their cartoons, all led to this moment, and it exceeded everything that came before it. And it still holds up, and the characters are still some of the best that the studio ever created, especially Dopey and Grumpy. Those ones were really well-rounded. They weren't just comedy relief. They were real. They felt like they had a soul, which was one of the amazing things about the movie. It's very difficult to review this movie because, to me, it's more than a movie. It's the movie that set the standard for animation and fantasy in general. And it's a very simple story, which works in the movie's favor because it gives the filmmakers time to focus on establishing the characters' personalities. All the best movies are not necessarily plot driven. They are about characters. And Snow White, the dwarves, and the Queen are all very easily defined, but they still feel real. If you think about it, the yodeling song was not plot-driven, but it was still an important scene because it established the bond between Snow White and the dwarves. Musicals are powerful because they oftentimes do a better job conveying importance to a plot point, like Someday My Prince Will Come. And the whole film is like this. It's very clever and tightly paced and funny and emotional. To be honest, a lot of animated films have surpassed Snow White in terms of characters and writing. I feel like Pinocchio and Cinderella hold up a little better. Certainly, Beauty and the Beast and The Lion King are way more emotional, but Snow White is really in a class of its own. There's something about it that's just untouchable. It's a one of a kind film. Walt Disney really is a genius. He helmed this thing to perfection. He made a true classic, and I never get tired of watching it. It's one of my favorites, and I'm really happy to talk about it. Thank you, Jonathan.
So Snow White, for many years, there was this whole like thing that, oh, she's a bad example of women because she's a damsel in distress and this and that. So for many years, I didn't want to watch this film because there was this whole negative idea about it. But then I don't remember what anniversary it was, probably like the 50th anniversary. I don't know what year it came out. I saw it this year. And I saw it for the first time, the full film, and I really liked it. I thought it was such a simple story, but so beautifully done, so charming and joyful and sweet. And so, yeah, I feel like people, yes, it's definitely not a role model. Snow White is not a role model, but it's definitely such a fun and really charming story that it deserves more good, reputation, I feel. And it's definitely, when I watch, I don't know, Toy Story, you're just like, oh, that animation looks, it's old. But with this one, I cannot believe it's the first animated film, and it's just so well done, and you see all these watercolors, and it's just the color palette of it is beautiful. And I was actually, because I when I was little, I did watch scenes of this film. I was horrified by the witch. And so it was great to watch the film this time fully, and like I did it. But yeah, it's a lot of great characters. I wish there was a little more backstory and understanding of the characters between the prince and her, but overall it's a lovely film.
Hello everyone, my name is Ibrahim, aka Mark Brown, and I'm here with my thoughts on Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, Disney's first animated full-length feature. And I'm a big fan of it. I do enjoy the film. I think it's, unlike what other people might say, I think it does stand the test of time. It's a film I can always go back to and enjoy. I love the animation, the colors, and to think that was made in 1937, to me, that's just shocking. It's just so good. I love the I have no problem with Snow White as a character, no matter what criticism she may have. I feel that she teaches a lot of good qualities, such as being kind and just having a positive outlook on bad situations, similar to Cinderella. So I really respect her for that. And of course, who cannot love the dwarfs? I love all of them, and seeing them in the film is just amazing. My favorite ones are probably Grumpy and Doc. I can't decide which one I like better. And Evil Queen is, she's a pretty good villain. I mean, that whole transformation scene, if you get into the old hag or the witch or whatever she's called, is just, that's mind blowing. So yeah, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, I'm a big fan of it, and if anyone has not seen the film yet, you should definitely check it out.
Hi everybody! So I'm Rachel from Rachel's Reviews, and this is such a great opportunity to be on Jonathan's channel, and especially to be on his channel talking about Snow White. Snow White is a wonderful film. Of course, it's a groundbreaking film. Everybody knows that because it was the first American-made animated film, and it was a huge struggle for Walt. People thought he was crazy for doing what he did. He took mortgage on his house to be able to do it. They called it Walt's Folly. And I'm sure that Jonathan will share most of that history with you. But what I want to talk about is why the movie, I think, still holds up even to this day. First of all, you have the beautiful animation. I love scenes like when the witch is transforming to the beggar woman. I don't know what's the correct word for her, but anyway, to the old lady witch. The way that uses the bubbles and the reflections and the colors is so cool, so great. It's totally holds up. I love the vocal performance in that movie. I love how she does both the haggard queen and the jealous queen. And it's really interesting because most villains are about trying to gain power that they don't have, but in Snow White, the evil queen is queen. She has all the power. She just can't handle the fact that one person in the whole kingdom is more beautiful than her. And so it's a pretty fun motivation, I think, for the villain, for the character. I think Snow White is a very sweet and lovely character. She doesn't judge people. She's very helpful, just a lovely, lovely character. She loves Grumpy, even though he doesn't love her back. And, of course, she has the love with the prince. And, a lot of people are really dismissive of these early princesses, but I think they have a lot to them about positivity, whistle while you work. The downside, I think, to Snow White is just, it's a little bit, the singing is a little out of date with that squeaky kind of high-pitched voice, but the songs are actually quite good. And the Seven Dwarfs are charming and really fun. They're really not getting a lot out of this deal of going to the mine, because they're getting all these diamonds and jewels, but they seem to be living pretty meagerly. So whoever owns that mine is doing quite well. But really fun, hi ho, and the washing song is really great. You have Dopey, which is a lot of fun, got a little comic relief. One of the nice things about this movie is that you get a little bit of every single emotion. You have when she's afraid in the forest, and I think that still holds up as being pretty scary, pretty well done. And then you get the laughter, of course, with the dwarfs and with Dopey and other things. Then you also get the sadness, because when Grumpy sees that Snow White has died, he's devastated, and the whole funeral scene is very sad, and I think it really works well. And of course, there's lots of happy moments as well. It's just a really, really good fairy tale that kind of has all the emotions that you could want. It has great characters. The animation is wonderful. And so all these years later, I think it's great, not only because it is the first, but it is great because it's great. So that's my thoughts on Snow White. It's just one of my favorites. So there you go. It'll be interesting to see what Jonathan has to say. So thanks so much, and we'll talk to y'all later. Bye!
Thank you so much to Eli, Sol, Mark, and Rachel for contributing their thoughts to the show. I'll have links in the description to Eli, Mark, and Rachel's Twitter accounts if you'd like to follow them, as well as to Sol and Rachel's YouTube channels. Like I said during the original review, the next episode for this series will be for Pinocchio, which was the second full-length feature Disney produced. But before we get to that, I have some other podcast episodes in the works, including the very first episode produced specifically for this new show. Next week I will be joined once more by Sol, and we will be talking all about the animated films of this past year, 2018 for those of you who may be listening in the far future, and we will be ranking them in order of how much we liked them. I'm really excited to share this one with you, so I'll see you then. Thanks for listening.